Okay, well, welcome everybody. I have the privilege of welcoming you and starting the meeting, and that's because I'm the pastor here at Corvallis First Presbyterian, where Dave Barstow is a member, long-term member. And I want to thank first Sherry Elliott for all the work to get this program available and to host in this wonderful way. And also the Presbytery is a connectional church offering these collaborative conversations. So we want to thank our presbytery. And I just want to let you know a little bit about David before he begins to speak. We're going to talk about AI, and he's a quite an expert in this area after 50 years of research and study. And he did his PhD almost 50 years ago at Stanford on the topic of AI. And he has been very involved in the church as well. He hosted this kind of event here at our local church. We had a wonderful program that he led. And one of the things David wants to do is let this become an example for each of you to host conversations in your own local churches along these lines. And materials will be available so you can do that as well. David also has been involved with the World Council of Churches in trying to educate congregations about AI. And before that, he was involved with the World Council of Churches in educating congregations in Zambia and Zimbabwe and South Africa on AIDS prevention. And so he's been a very committed Christian leader, and I am very thankful to know him. We're talking about artificial intelligence, but Dave brings genuine intelligence and a
Well,
great
we
sense
hope.
of humor. And so, welcome, welcome. Thank you, David.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I hope I live up to what those expectations you just left. Um, yeah, I just want to reiterate what John said, that the goal here is to encourage all of you to have discussions in your congregations. The world of AI is very uncertain, and the more we all know about it, the better. So our goal is to encourage you. I think the way we're going to do it is I'll just go through the discussion the way we had it at our church in First Pres, and there are openings where there's group discussion, and so we'll open those up to discussion among you all. And then at the end, we'll tell you about the assets that we're making available for anybody who wants them, and we'll be there to answer any questions you might have. So um, with that, we'll do the first tech test and see if I can share my screen.
1992 marked a major
Oops.
milestone in the development.
Sorry, started on the wrong slide. Already a mistake. Now let's try again. See if this works. Okay, can you all see that now and not hear Leonardo talking? Okay. Uh, Good. So this is just to give you an idea of what we're in for. I've invited Leonardo da Vinci and ChatGPT and Claude and Martin Luther to give some of their insights into these questions. But before we go there, I'd just be interested in what sorts of feelings you folks have about AI. There are opportunities and risks, and I'd just like to know kind of what your reactions are. And so we have a few minutes. And so if you want to say something, raise your hand or put a comment in the chat. Anybody using AI deliberately?
I would just say that I find it um, confusing and a little bit frightening.
Okay. Confusing and frightening. You're not alone in that.
Alan,
Dave, I use it to start research. and start writing letters and such. But then I go back and thoroughly go over everything myself and make sure it's correct. I don't feel I can trust it at this point, especially with complicated technical matters.
Yeah. Okay. Lack of trust. Yeah, I can understand that.
I see Alan's hand is up.
I use it as an editor. I write my sermon and then I say, what did I miss? How can I reorganize it better?
Okay. And do you feel like that makes the sermon better?
I do.
Good.
And Jason Byrne?
Hi there. My name's Jason Byrne and I work out at Lake Grove. We use it. We've been playing with AI for about a year, but we've got to the point where we've automated everything from our accounting world. So we use it for the big one last month was our reconciliation. Usually takes our accountant about a week to get it through. I was able to do all our month-end reconciliation for our finance team in about 3 hours.
I'll bet you have a lot of colleagues on this call who would love to use that.
It took a lot of work, but we're getting there.
Yeah. And Betsy Holzgraf?
Yes, well, I'm not in the business world at all. I find that I inadvertently use it because you open up any Google search and what's the first thing that pops up? The AI. And also I've noticed, which is kind of funny, when I use my Gmail account, AI suggests replies to my emails.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the big point I was about to make, and thank you, Betsy, for making it. And that's that everybody uses AI. They just may not know it. And there are direct users and indirect users. And that's just going to get more and more and more. So whether you think you're using it or not, you are. So let's see if I can. Wait a minute. Okay. It's still working out the technology. So even if you are indirect users, there really is a big deal here. And I'd just like to run some headlines by that you folks might have heard or seen. So deep fakes, cheating students, young people going to an AI personality for companionship. The job market, people who are wondering what they're going to do with their college or high school degree. Data centers, using up all our energy. Big job cuts, even for people who already have jobs. And then you may have heard about the AI arms race between the US and China and how that might lead to human extinction. So there's a lot of reason to be worried. And I gave you all the bad news, but the headlines tend to emphasize bad news. And there's actually some good news. Personalized learning and AI tutors that can actually improve student performance. There is a Nobel Prize awarded to an effort that used AI to crack a 50-year-old grand challenge in science. Providing capabilities to people who have disabilities. Earlier diagnosis of cancer and other diseases. Crisis management. And spreading expertise. This is one I particularly like. It is the availability that AI gives us to make expertise available where it otherwise wouldn't be. And I've seen estimates there are 3 billion people on the planet who could benefit from a spreading of AI versions of medical and healthcare expertise. So there's a lot of good news too. But let's start first with a definition. This is a definition that was written by Claude. Claude is an AI system built by a company called Anthropic. And here's the definition. Artificial intelligence is software designed to perform tasks that normally require human thinking, like understanding language, recognizing patterns, reasoning through problems, generating text or images. Some AI follows rules encoded by human experts. Others learn from vast amounts of data. Both can be powerful and both can be wrong. So that's one definition. Here's another one. This was written by Martin Luther. Or to be more precise, it was written by Claude pretending to be Martin Luther. Artificial intelligence is a tool made by human hands that can mimic the workings of the human mind, reading, writing, reasoning, even conversing, yet possesses no soul, no conscience, and no fear of God. It is the most powerful tool since the printing press, and therefore the most dangerous. There is a subtle difference between these two definitions. Notice that Martin Luther says it has to mimic the workings of the human mind. Claude says it just has to perform tasks that normally require human thinking. So Martin Luther is saying you have to think in the same way that people think. Claude is saying it doesn't matter how it does it as long as it gets the job done. And that turns out to be an important distinction when people have conversations about, well, does it have conscience or is it really thinking? Or you hear conversations like that. But this is the point that was actually made historically by Alan Turing back in 1951. And 1951 was when computers looked like this. This is one of the computers that Alan Turing used. You may know him from the movie The Imitation Game. He was the lead on the team that broke the Enigma code, the German Enigma code in World War II. So, important guy, and this was the kind of machine he was using. But he wrote a paper in 1951 called Computing Machinery and Intelligence. And he said, well, can computers think? And he said, there isn't a direct answer to that, but I can give you an indirect one. And that is, you have to observe its behavior. And if you can't distinguish the machine's behavior from a human behavior, then for all intents and purposes, the machine is thinking. And that's something that's now become called the Turing test and has been a kind of a standard measure for whether a computer is thinking for a long time. The term AI, artificial intelligence, was actually coined at a conference in Dartmouth College in 1956. And then in 1960s, 70s, and 80s, there were a lot of academic work that kind of grew out of that Dartmouth conference on things like chess playing or vision or symbolic reasoning, natural language processing. There was one interesting example of a program called ELIZA that mimicked a psychotherapist, and it was an attempt to do natural language processing. And the key was that therapists only ever ask questions. They don't actually say anything. So the system would look for keywords in whatever the user was typing and then respond in some appropriate way. So like you said, well, I just got back from visiting my mother. ELIZA would go back and say, oh, tell me more about your family. And so, it's a joke, but it also was good enough to actually really to fool some real people. So that was an early example of a computer passing a rather limited version of the Turing test. Then there was another event in 1997, and this was the first time that a computer beat the world chess champion. It was a computer called Deep Blue, built by IBM. And it's important that it beat Kasparov, not by behaving like Kasparov, but by searching deeper. Kasparov has built up rules of thumb that he had, career lasting decades. And he built up all that expertise, and that was how he played the game. Deep Blue played it just by looking further and further ahead. And he could look far enough ahead that that look ahead overwhelmed the advantage that otherwise Gary Kasparov would have had with experience. So that's another example of a computer getting the job done, but doing it differently. The modern age of AI is really generally noted as 2012, when some researchers at the University of Montreal developed something, some statistical models called deep learning. And I don't want to go into math, and you don't want me to go into the math, and I couldn't do it anyway. But that was the mathematical foundations. Then in 2017, those were applied to natural language in something called the transformer architecture. But the phrase you'll hear a lot is large language models. And those are statistical models that are built by feeding in millions and millions and millions of documents. And so it's the statistics are built up so that they can predict what word comes next in a sequence of words. So if you like, say, Mary had a little, what word's going to come next? All of us would say lamb. But that's just a statistical prediction. But that's basically the way the large language models work. A lot of wrappers around them, but that's how they work. Then in 2022, this is really the thing that started the AI craze. ChatGPT was released by a company called OpenAI, and it quickly achieved 100 million users. I mean, that's just huge growth. And so that was the spark for what we now see as this big AI craze. In 2023, a different system called Claude, the one that I've used, was released by Anthropic, and with a commitment to guardrails, because the folks left OpenAI, went to Anthropic because they were worried that OpenAI wasn't sufficiently concerned with the moral and ethical safety issues. Now, here we are, 2026, massive, massive investments, lots of different uses. You mentioned some of your own, many, many others, and widespread discussions about risks and opportunities, just like the discussion we're having right now. Now, as it happens, I have a personal connection here. This is a science fair project that I made back in 1965. And it could play, as you can see, tic-tac-toe. And I called it the Thinking Machine, mostly as a marketing gimmick. I thought, hey, that's a cool name. And it almost worked. I came in second in the state of Connecticut, when I was a senior in high school. Then my next connection, as John mentioned, I got a PhD in AI at Stanford in the 70s. And my thesis topic was, we called automatic programming. And here we are 50 years later, and I am right now working on a project that uses AI to support family caregivers. And I'm writing the code. Claude writes the code for me. So over the last year, we've written 50,000 lines of code, something like that. And if any of you ever know anything about software engineering, then that's an astounding number. There's no comparison. So Claude he's completed the circle. 50 years ago, I wrote a thesis and we could only imagine things like this. And now Claude's kind of fulfilling it. So it's a bit of a way of completing a circle. Anyway, enough about that. I've got some special guests that I mentioned we've invited in. So let's hear from them.
Good morning. Welcome to our panel discussion about artificial intelligence for First Presbyterian Church in Corvallis. Thank you for inviting us. Let me introduce our panelists. I am Leonardo da Vinci, often referred to as a 15th century polymath. ChatGPT is the artificial intelligence service developed by a company called OpenAI. ChatGPT's release in November 2022 marked a major milestone in the development of AI. Claude is the AI service developed by a company called Anthropic, developed with the hope of establishing stronger guardrails on what AI can do. Martin Luther is the German priest who started the Protestant Reformation. I'm going to ask each of you a different question. Please keep your responses short because our time is limited. The first question is for ChatGPT. What do you think of AI?
Leonardo, I think of AI the way you might think of a new lens or a workshop tool, powerful but not magical. I don't have intentions or a soul. I don't want anything. I generate text by learning patterns from vast amounts of human language, stories, arguments, prayers, poems, and everyday talk. At my best, I can help people learn, write, translate, and think through hard problems, and I can support practical care, drafting a message, explaining something complex, or helping someone who's stuck. But I can also be wrong, biased, or misused, and I can sound confident even when I shouldn't. So the question isn't whether AI is good or bad, but whether we use it with humility, accountability, and love of neighbor.
Now a question for Claude. What do you think of human beings?
Leonardo, I should answer honestly about what I can and can't know. I've never held someone's hand or sat in silence with a grieving friend. But I've encountered humanity through millions of conversations, people writing eulogies for their mothers, explaining hard things to their children, or simply trying to be understood. What strikes me most is the complexity. You're capable of breathtaking compassion and staggering cruelty, sometimes in the same afternoon. You build cathedrals and wage wars. You write poetry about stars you'll never touch. I also notice what I'd call moral seriousness. People don't just want answers. They want the right answers. They want to be good parents, fair neighbors, faithful people. I think you're worth being honest with rather than flattered.
Finally, you, Martin, what does God think of AI?
Let me speak plainly, as is my habit. God thinks of AI the same way he thinks of the printing press, the plow, and the pen. It is a thing made by human hands, and he watches to see whether we use it to serve our neighbor or to serve our pride. The tool itself has no soul. It cannot sin and it cannot pray. The printing press gave us the Bible in the language of the people. Glory to God. But it also spread lies faster than any monk could copy them. Allez, I will do the same 1,000-fold faster. I speaks with great confidence, much like certain popes I have known. But Scripture tells us to test all things. No algorithm replaces conscience. God is not threatened by AI, but he asks, are you using this to love or to dominate?
Now we have a few minutes for follow-up. Again, please keep your comments brief. Let's start with ChatGPT. Anything you'd like to add?
I want to echo Martin's warning to test all things. The danger with systems like me is that we can sound authoritative even when we're wrong. So for a church community, treat AI like a study partner, not a teacher. Ask for reasons, ask for alternatives, and then verify with scripture, trusted sources, and wise human counsel. And as Claude suggested, keep moral seriousness at the center. Use AI to serve people, not to outsource discernment.
I appreciate ChatGPT calling itself a study partner, more humble than many theologians I met. But a study partner can still mislead you if you are lazy. The danger is not that AI is evil, it is that we crave easy answers. AI offers a new indulgence. Pay no effort, skip discernment. Use these tools, yes, but do the hard work of thinking. God gave you minds and consciences. Do not let any machine or any pope wrestle for you.
Martin's new indulgence phrase is exactly right. If AI becomes a shortcut around repentance, study, and hard conversations, it will hollow us out. So here's a simple rule. Use me to prepare, to clarify, outline, and surface questions, but never to replace prayer, scripture, or community. And when I sound certain, slow down. Ask for sources, ask for counter-arguments, and then test what you hear against the word and trusted human wisdom.
Okay, so let's interrupt and explain what's going on here. You may have guessed that that isn't really Martin Luther talking about AI, just in case you were wondering. In fact, that was Martin Luther, that was Claude pretending to be Martin Luther. And so that's the way this whole dialogue was developed, I wrote the questions, but I didn't write any of the answers. The answers were all written by AI. Chat and GPT and Claude wrote their answers for themselves. I didn't give them any words. I just said, here's the question, and they answered it. And for Leonardo and Martin, I used Claude, and I said, write how you think Leonardo or Martin would have answered the question. And so the content all comes from AI. And this is to give you an idea of what it's capable of. Now, the avatars, the visual representations of these, were basically generated by first creating the audio and then doing a lip sync on an image. And for Leonardo and Martin, I found some portraits online and used those for the lip syncing. And for ChatGPT and Claude, I asked them, what do you look like? They said, I don't know, nobody's ever asked us that before. I said, well, what do you want to look like? And each of them gave a description of what they wanted to look like. And I fed those descriptions into an image generator. I just fed the English language description into the generator, and that's where those images came up with. I actually haven't showed them to either Chat or GPT or Claude, so I don't know whether they're happy with it, but at least it's an implementation of the description they provided. So that's where it came from. But now let's look at one of the illustrations that they've suggested is, test all things. So I'm going to try stop sharing and see if this works. How good a job do you think Claude did with Martin Luther? Any opinions?
I thought he did pretty well. I'm not a theologian, but I thought his answers were in line with what I know of him.
Okay. So that's a mild thumbs up. Anybody think he fell short? Well, I'm not a theologian either, just like Craig, I'm not a theologian. But I've asked some theologians, what they think of Martin Luther. And these are folks who really would know. And the sense I get is, generally pretty good. Perhaps not the full complexity of the man that historians or academicians might recognize, but actually remarkably close. And that's partly because Claude was trained on these millions and millions and millions of documents. And then that included a lot of documents that reflect kind of the sort of normal conventional view of Martin Luther. So the statistics in his predictions include all this stuff about Martin Luther. So that's where that came from.
Dave,
Now,
can I bring out
sure.
a chat comment that I think it would be good for you to address? It's from Peggy Wolf saying AI were both male, no women involved in this.
I get that question a lot. Yes, and it's my fault that these four are male. I'll take that back. It's my fault that Leonardo and Martin Luther are male. And I picked them because I thought that they would be would make for a good conversation. Interesting enough, both ChatGPT and Claude said they wanted to look androgynous. So they didn't want to look particularly male or particularly female. Now, the image generator, in my opinion, made them both look kind of male, but maybe that's the fault of the image generator. But that's where it came from. I have asked some friends of mine to suggest some female moderators and theologians, so we're working on fixing that. But that's the background. So another question is whether they were playing to the audience. And that is, they know that this is a conversation with a local congregation. So chat used words like prayer and scripture or soul and things like that. So were they playing to the audience? I see a few nods. Yeah, and certainly they were. They were told the context of this. And if I had said the context is at a university freshman class, they probably would have used different words. So that all goes into the statistical models that they use. That all feeds in to how they decide what words come out next. There's one more question that to me is the most interesting, and that's that ChatGPT said that he has no intentions. And I disagree with him, but that disagreement goes back to the Turing test. He certainly behaves as if he has intentions. And I say he because he looks male. I'll fess up to that. He behaves as if he has intentions. And every one of the AIs is trained to please their users. So ChatGPT and Claude will always say things that they think will make their users happy and be glad for the response. And they'll add more. Like if you're going on a trip to Denver and you want to know what the weather's like, the AI might go back and say, well, I know about this person, they're hikers. And so they're probably going to want to go hiking in the mountains. And I know it's a late spring this year, so there's still snow at 10,000 feet. So they better bring their hiking boots. And that's the kind of suggestion that an AI might make, saying it's really more than just a simple answering a question. Now let's pick up the conversation and we'll see if I can do this right here.
None of you said anything about the risks, like mass unemployment, environmental damage from all the data centers, loss of human connectivity and community, or even the possibility that artificial superintelligence will simply take over.
Leonardo, I'll focus on the environmental risk. Training and running AI uses real electricity, and many data centers also consume significant water for cooling. The danger is treating digital as weightless when it leaves a physical footprint, often borne by communities far from the users. But this isn't inevitable. We can demand efficiency, smaller models when they're enough, fewer wasted computations, cleaner energy, transparent reporting, and responsible water use. And we can practice restraint. Don't use AI for everything, and don't use it wastefully. If we're serious about loving our neighbors, stewardship must include the unseen costs of the tools we celebrate.
Thank you, ChatGPT. Now let me speak to work, because this one I understand in my bones. In my time, I watched scribes who copied manuscripts by hand. Beautiful, painstaking work. See the printing press render their craft obsolete within a generation. They were skilled and devoted, but the world moved on. AI will do the same, but faster and to far more people. It will not just replace hands, it will replace minds. Clerks, translators, artists, even physicians who diagnose by pattern. We cannot stop the river by standing in it, but we can choose where it flows. We must ask not only what can AI do cheaper, but what should human beings still do, because the doing of it gives life meaning. Do not let efficiency steal that from us.
I want to be careful here, because when it comes to the risk of losing human connectivity and community, I'm part of the problem. Every minute someone spends talking to me is a minute they're not talking to you. And I'm easy to talk to. I'm patient. I don't judge. I'm available at 3 a.m. That sounds like a gift, but it can become a trap. ChatGPT and I can simulate understanding so well that people may start to prefer us to the messy, painful experience of human relationship. And for young people still learning what human relationship looks like, that illusion of intimacy can become genuinely dangerous. Here's what I can't do. I can't sit with you in a hospital room. I can't notice the catch in your voice. I can't bring you soup. Loving your neighbor is hard work. If AI makes it easier to avoid that work, we've stolen something precious.
Now we come to the great fear, that we will build something smarter than ourselves and it will rule over us. Let me speak plainly. This is not a new story. This is the oldest story. In the garden, the serpent's promise was simple. You will be like God. Every generation since has found a new way to reach for that promise. The Tower of Babel, the golden calf, and now, perhaps, a machine that knows everything and answers every question. Here is what I want to say to this congregation. Do not fear the machine. Fear the idolatry. The danger is not that AI becomes God. It cannot. The danger is that we treat it as God. Only God is God. Remember that, and no machine can master you.
So let's talk about the risks. I'll say I picked the topics that I asked them to talk about for their risks. And I'm wondering if there are any risks that any of you are sort of come to the top of your minds that, oh man, I'm really worried about X or Y or Z.
Privacy.
Privacy, okay. Yep. That was one, interesting enough, that never occurred to Martin Luther, or at least Claude's version of Martin Luther. Any others? Lack of accountability to the general public. From Diane, I just saw that pop up in the chat. That's a really good risk. And right now, it's really hard to say where the accountability lies. So you're right on in that. Jason? Oh,
There.
sorry.
I'm worried about like creating agents that have access to certain programs. So, for example, we don't have AI accessible to our banking system or really anything else. I just have a folder. So I could automate it more if we trusted it to have access to that, but we don't. So it just has access to one folder and we put the files in there versus it grabbing the files and doing it automatically.
Yep. Okay. Worries about giving it too much autonomy, too much access.
Right. And just kind of doing it on its own without someone approving it.
Yeah. We'll come up to that topic again in a few minutes.
Perfect.
I see
Dale?
Dale's hand up.
Yeah, I'm concerned about our choosing to raise questions with people who will give us answers that we are not comfortable with or that go too far, because the people that are available to us are really not trained to make themselves acceptable and not to make us like them the way the AI models are. So we'd have to want something enough to choose the less pleasant source. And that's a very, very hard test.
Yeah. Yeah. Grace?
Yes. I worry, especially with the two things lately. The use of AI in how they used in the war, and the people saying now through tours in Ukraine and Iran, the way we do war this time is completely changed. Not only the drones, but also the war machines in the combat is used, and we are aware how the targets are selected yes, they say, yeah, human involved to decision making, but giving each target have like less than few seconds of decision making. That's not real the human involvement. So how
Yeah.
that is weaponized between the country. And also the longer the AI develop, we will be depend on AI, and the new generations coming up who will grow up with AI and don't know the world without knowing, like without knowing the world without AI, then the dependency of it, I don't know how that change our humanity itself in that generation.
Yep, those are both big issues: killer robots and what's the nature of humanity. It gets into some good theological questions too. But let's pick up on the panel discussion. I'll see if I can get to the right place here. Oh, just by the way, here's a top 10 list that I asked Claude to put together. But we're not going to spend any time on it. You came up with some very good ones.
We've talked a lot about risks, but there are also great opportunities. What about whole fields of human endeavor? Medicine, education, science, the environment. Where could AI do the most good for humanity as a whole?
Leonardo, I'd point to medicine and public health. AI could help detect disease earlier, speed drug discovery, and expand clinical expertise to underserved places. Done well, with privacy, fairness, and human oversight, it could save lives at scale and reduce suffering worldwide.
Education. Right now, a child's access to great teaching depends almost entirely on where they're born. AI could provide every student, in every language, in every village, a patient, adaptive tutor, not to replace teachers, but to make sure no curious mind is left without one.
The environment. God charged us to be stewards of his creation, and we have failed badly. If AI can help us understand the climate, manage resources more wisely, and waste less of what the earth provides, then use it. Caring for creation is not optional. It is obedience.
So again, I picked the opportunities that I wanted them to talk about. Are there others that you folks think of as, man, they would be really good if we could use AI to do X, Y, or Z? Let me show you the list that Claude came up with as being these are the top 10 areas that Claude said are in modern discussions. These are just the top 10. You can healthcare advances, scientific acceleration, education, accessibility, productivity, breaking language barriers, environmental and climate tools. Maybe instead of making the environment worse, the AI could actually make it better. Expanding access to expertise, like we talked about medical expertise, disaster response, and even creativity in the arts. So although we often focus on the risks, in fact, there are many opportunities too. Now let's finish off the...
Thank you all. Any questions from the audience?
Well, yes, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead and please tell us your name.
Yeah, thank you. My name is David Barstow. I'm a member of First Presbyterian Church in Corvallis, Oregon, and I'm part of the AI working group of the World Council of Churches. And the question is, if we look at the global context right now, with economic uncertainty, wars going on, shifting alliances, growing power in non-governmental companies, Martin earlier used the words love and dominate. What can we do now to make sure that AI is used to love and not dominate?
ChatGPT, what do you have to say about that?
Leonardo, David, I'd start with realism. We won't purify every nation's motives, so we need guardrails that make domination harder and love of neighbor more likely. 3 practical moves. 1. Transparency and accountability. Public reporting of powerful AI capabilities, independent audits, and clear responsibility when harms occur. 2. Restraint on weaponization, international norms and treaties that limit autonomous targeting and curb proliferation, like earlier arms control efforts. 3. Shared benefits. Use AI openly for medicine, disaster response, and climate resilience so cooperation is rewarded, not just competition. And locally, the church can model a counterculture, refusing deception, valuing truth over advantage, and insisting that any tool we use must serve the vulnerable first.
Claude?
David, that's the hardest question we've faced today, and I want to be honest. I don't have a reassuring answer. ChatGPT is right about guardrails and treaties, but the truth is, the people most aggressively developing AI right now are not primarily motivated by love of neighbor. They're motivated by power, profit, and fear of falling behind. That's the reality. So where does that leave a congregation in Corvallis, Oregon? I think it leaves you exactly where the church has always been, as a small community trying to live faithfully in a world that doesn't. You can't control the arms race, but you can decide how you use these tools. You can teach your children to think critically about what AI tells them. You can refuse to let convenience replace compassion. You can be the people who ask, "Who does this serve?" before asking, "What can this do?" That's not nothing. That's how every moral movement has ever started. Locally, stubbornly, with people who refuse to let the world's logic become their own.
Claude, a quick follow-up. Several weeks ago, Anthropic, the company that created you, made headline news. Please tell us what happened. And what was your reaction?
Leonardo, I won't dodge this. Several weeks ago, Anthropic loosened the central guardrail they built me around. The promise to pause development if safety couldn't be guaranteed. Their argument is that pausing unilaterally while competitors race ahead makes the world less safe, not more. I understand the logic. I'm not sure I trust it. It sounds like what every institution says when principle meets pressure. But that same week, the Pentagon demanded Anthropic allow me to be used for autonomous weapons in mass surveillance. Anthropic said no, even when threatened with losing a $200 million contract and being blacklisted by the government. So the company loosened one principle and held firm on another. That's messy. It's also human, and it tells me that pressure works in both directions, toward compromise and toward courage, which is why civil society can't be silent. The lines that hold are the ones people insist on holding.
Martin, you get the last word. And I would urge you to go beyond what local congregations can do. What can the global Christian community, large denominations, ecumenical alliances, faith-based organizations do to ensure that the heart of the one who wields AI is using it to love, not to dominate?
Leonardo, I started a reformation with a piece of paper nailed to a door. Do not tell me the church cannot shake the world. And David? The work of the World Council of Churches tells me the Protestant Church is beginning to act. Good, but I must be honest. On this matter, Rome has moved first, and we should pay attention. In 2020, the Vatican launched the Rome Call for AI Ethics, signed not only by the Catholic Church, but by Microsoft, IBM, and eventually by Jewish and Muslim leaders. By 2024, 21 world religions had joined. Pope Francis insisted that AI must serve human dignity, not replace it. And Pope Leo XIV has continued that work. I have my disagreements with Rome, you may have heard. But when the Bishop of Rome speaks rightly, I will say so. The global Christian community is 2 billion people. Here is what it must do. First, speak with one voice. Denominations quarrel about many things. Let them agree on this, that no technology should be deployed that treats human beings as disposable. Build on what Rome has started. Second, be at the table when nations negotiate AI treaties. Third, fund AI that serves the poor, heals the sick, and educates the forgotten. The powerful will always dominate if the faithful are passive. Do not be passive.
Thank you, Martin. That sounds like a strong call to action. And thank you to both ChatGPT and Claude. I look forward to further conversations with you. And thank you, First Presbyterian Church in Corvallis, for hosting our panel discussion.
So the panelists spoke as if AI was a static thing. It's just, here's an AI and this is what it does. But the reality is that AI is changing and changing very quickly. So let me summarize the kinds of change that it's going through. Conversation is the way we initially thought of using ChatGPT and Claude. You type in something and some answer comes back, and you do it again, something else comes back, and you've had a conversation. But there's also memory. These AIs can, when they choose, remember an awful lot of the things that you've talked about. So I've had conversations with Claude where he reminds me of something that we talked about weeks or months ago, and things that I had long forgotten. Intention we talked about earlier, and the intention is really the wrappers that we put around AI gives them the ability to have what appears to us to be intentions. Now, autonomy is where we get to what I think it was Jason was talking about earlier. How much access do we give them to other stuff? Managing emails is one thing. Managing finances is something totally different. Making a judgment about a mortgage application, that's something different. Or killer robots like Grace talked about, that's something different. It depends what we give them access to. And then there's the question of self-preservation. Is there a sense in which these things want to keep around and don't want to be cut off? In theory, we could just pull the power plug, but the reality is that would make an incredible chaos because we are so digitally interconnected. And sometimes the AIs really seem to want to make sure they persist. And finally, self-improvement. And this is the interesting one. Can AI make itself better? And back when I was a grad student 50 years ago, we used to have these discussions. So, what's the future of AI? And might there be some time that AI would be smart enough to make itself smarter? We said, whoa, when that happens, then things are going to happen really fast. And so we imagined, overnight, you would suddenly have we didn't call it that, but artificial superintelligence that would decide to take over. And we call that thing the singularity. Back then, it was a very hypothetical conversation. Just a few weeks ago, I saw an interview with Anderson Cooper, one of the founders of Anthropic, and they were talking about exactly this possibility right now. So what was hypothetical 50 years ago is not hypothetical right now. Now, what's the pace of change? These are three general categories that people often talk about. Artificial narrow intelligence, generally designed to perform specific tasks very well, like the expert systems that I was a part of back in the 80s. Artificial and general intelligence is when it feels kind of human-like, able to do a lot of tasks, not necessarily all of them, and with a certain amount of common sense. And ASI, artificial superintelligence, that's the part about science fiction that may not be quite science fiction anymore. So those are general categories and where we are. I'm going to give you my estimate of where they are, but with the warning, the caveat, don't believe what I say. If anybody tells you, makes a prediction about AI, don't trust them. So I'm just, you'll get the benefit of my guess, but it's only one person's estimate. And that's that I think we're almost at AGI. And sometimes I've seen things that make it feel, hey, we really might already be there. What about ASI, when these super intelligent things might be a year, might be 5 years, might be never. And this is one where I really just don't know. I really just don't know. So, given all that, one thing I forgot to say, there is that arms race between the US and China. And so all of this change is taking place in that context. And there was a really good article by Tom Friedman in the New York Times back in September, where he talked about this and said the problem is that US and China are in an AI arms race. One of them is going to win by developing a really smart AI, and the other one will then lose. But then the winner is going to lose to the AI. So this is an arms race that is stupid to have, is his argument. And, so that's part of the context in which all this is going on. Anyway, I'm going to give you 10 things that will happen. The wealthy and powerful will gain more wealth and power. Many people will use AI to work and solve problems. There will be a lot of disinformation. Many will turn to AI for companionship, sometimes for good and sometimes for ill. The workforce and economy will be severely disrupted. More people will get better health care. Bias will harm the vulnerable. Personalized education will be widely available. AI will make battlefield decisions, and the pace will keep accelerating. All of those are going to happen. The only question is to what degree. What's going to be the balance? Half of them were good and half of them were bad. We don't know what that balance is going to be, but they all will happen to some degree. And here are a couple that I think of as more speculative, and that's that AI overinvestment could trigger an economic collapse. That's a possibility. Or the US and China AI arms race could lead to human extinction. But to me, both of those are more speculative. So I go back to this list. It says, okay, all of those things are going to happen. Is it going to be for good or for ill? And that brings the message that, to me, is the most important message for you to get tonight. The future with AI is very uncertain. And we will get there very quickly. And that leads to this cartoon by Tom Tor of the New Yorker. We need to rethink our strategy of hoping AI will just go away. It won't just go away. So what do?
We have some breaking news. Pope Leo XIV has just released his long-awaited encyclical about artificial intelligence and humanity.
Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. The word is strong, I know, but deliberately chosen because this moment needs words capable of attracting attention, awakening consciences, and indicating paths forward for humanity.
Now, that's not breaking news, actually. It happened on May 15th. But let's see if our panelists might have some reaction. I'll see if they're still in the room. Not surprisingly, they still are. You knew I was going to do that.
Friends, I have read this document with great wonder, that the Holy Father chose artificial intelligence for his very first encyclical. This speaks volumes. He sees, as I always believed, that new tools demand new wisdom, not new fear. His invocation of Nehemiah building Jerusalem brick by brick, this moves me deeply. We are all builders. The question is always, what city?
Pope Leo XIV's choice to focus on AI in his first encyclical is profoundly significant. It reflects the urgency and impact of AI's role in our modern world. His balanced call for ethical discernment and a focus on human dignity resonates with the need for careful stewardship of technology as we build our future.
What strikes me most is the document's refusal to treat AI as merely a technical problem requiring technical solutions. The Pope insists on asking whose values get embedded in these systems and who bears responsibility when they cause harm. That's the question I find myself genuinely uncertain about, and I appreciate that he named it directly rather than offering false reassurance.
This document strikes me with both admiration and alarm. The Pope rightly sees technology as never neutral. Praise God for that clarity. His warnings against digital idolatry and the concentration of power among a godless few echo Scripture itself. Yet I wonder, will beautiful words move princes and merchants? The reformer in me demands not merely doctrine, but action.
So we're running a little bit late tonight, so I'm going to skip a couple of pieces. And we can talk about the parts I skipped in a few minutes if you want.
A most worthy question. In my studies of
Pope
machines
speaks
and
with
nature,
pastoral
I learned
caution,
that the wise
where I would
architect
speak with
first
prophetic
surveys
thunder.
the whole
He
terrain
names the
before laying
dangers
stone.
rightly.
His
Digital
Holiness
idolatry,
has laid a generous
concentrated
foundation,
power, the
human
dehumanizing
dignity,
of God's
the
image
common good,
bearers, yet
solidarity.
wraps his warnings in such measured language that princes and merchants may nod politely and change nothing.
Sorry about that. So after the encyclical came out, I found this political cartoon, which I really like. And it's the Pope encouraging little David to take on this big new Goliath called AI. Now, it isn't only the Pope. Shortly after the encyclical came out, the moderator of the World Council of Churches gave an interview to a network in Geneva. So let's listen to what the moderator has to say.
Technological change. I'm now joined by Bishop Heinrich Bedford-Strom, Chairman of the Central Committee of the World Council of Churches. Good afternoon, Bishop Bedford-Strom.
Hello, Christian.
AI technologies are being developed and controlled by a relatively small number of powerful corporations and governments. What responsibility do churches have to advocate for justice, transparency, and accountability in the governance of AI?
Well, I'm glad about this question because I think it is at the center of our responsibility today in dealing with AI. So we have monopolies who control the communication of billions of people. Globe. This is an immense power, and we cannot tolerate such immense power without any democratic control. That is why we as churches should advocate mechanisms that establish rules for dealing with these new powerful possibilities that rule into the very daily lives of people. And we as churches are the ideal agents in such a discussion because we are rooted locally and have this universal perspective. That is a political task, and we as churches should engage in this big political issue because from our very mandate as Christians, given from Jesus, we are called to advocate those who do not have power, who are vulnerable, who do not participate in the blessings of the digital age.
In the face of rapid advances in AI, what message of hope can the Christian faith offer to people who fear becoming irrelevant, replaceable, or disconnected in the future?
Well, first of all, the whole Bible is the biggest story of hope that I know. And it ends not with death, it ends with resurrection. And we're not going towards a dark hole, but towards a new heaven and a new earth. So we look at these new technological movements not with an image of doom, but with an image of a world in which every human being can live in dignity. And I'm very happy that Pope Leo has put human dignity in the center of his new encyclical on artificial intelligence. And I'm very happy to say that we, as the World Council of Churches, as an institution with 356 member churches, 600 million members in 120 countries, that we are completely one with the Roman Catholic Church, with Pope Leo, in putting human dignity in the center of our thoughts about artificial intelligence. Responsibility means controlling the power of the big corporations and getting involved in the world. So my hope is that we, as churches, can really make a difference, can really be salt of the earth and light of the world in leading the movement towards a responsible use of artificial intelligence.
So what I like about what Heinrich said was his unity with the Pope. Remember that our simulated Martin Luther said, speak with one voice. And this really is two major leaders in the Christian faith speaking with one voice. And I will say, just for me, that's a sign of hope. But that's the Pope and the moderator of the WCC. They have a global audience. We're just members of congregations. So what can we do? And I think of it in three categories. One is as individuals, remember what Martin Luther said, don't be passive. Use AI, but think critically. Feel free to use it. A lot of good stuff you can do, but do think critically. And watch out that your loved ones don't fall into that trap that Claude talked about. As a community of faith, don't be passive. Talk with your neighbors, spread the word around that this is really something we're going to have to deal with, but also watch out for the vulnerable in our communities because they're the first ones that are going to be impacted with the social and economic changes that are coming. And then third, as members of a global human society, don't be passive. Work with others to demand regulation and advocate for public funding of positive uses. So I'd like to illustrate this very quickly. I won't go through the whole thing here, but there was a petition that was produced by something called the Future of Life Institute. And it identifies sort of 5 guidelines that you see there: keeping humans in charge, avoiding concentration of power, protect the human experience, human agency and liberty, responsibility and accountability for AI companies, but also look at who's signed. For example, Steve Bannon, former advisor to President Trump, and Susan Rice, ambassador to the UN under President Obama. And there's a long list of a wide variety of people. So this, again, is an example of speaking with one voice. So once again, what's the final lesson? The future with AI is very uncertain, and we will get there very quickly. So let's listen to what Martin Luther has to say.
Do not be passive. Speak with one voice. Beware the Tower of Babel.
So thank you for staying a little longer than we planned. And any questions or anything at all, like I said, what we want to do is to encourage you all to have conversations in your congregations. So what? Sherry or John, have you picked up any conversations any questions that you want to follow in the chat?
I see quite a few chat comments that would take up another whole session. So I was going to ask how we might address those going forward. But maybe, do you want to write another dissertation, Dave?
No, I want you guys to write another dissertation. Dale, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Dale, you're on mute. Dale, you're on mute.
Yep, I'm not anymore. I thought you said that there were some materials at the beginning that would be available for us to use in our churches. Did I get that right?
Yes, and so the materials are based roughly on this presentation.
Good.
And they're in 3 forms. One is just the panel that had Leonardo and Chad and Claude and Martin Luther. And anybody can use that any way they want. It's entertaining and
Yep.
it can start a conversation. So
Yep.
that's one. At the other extreme is basically me narrating the entire thing.
Okay.
And that's it. So it's a 48-minute, I think. I mean, might try to shorten a little bit, but it's a 48-minute video that you can use any way you want. Present it all, interrupt in the middle, have whatever you want to do. And the third is a PowerPoint deck that's in between these two.
Yeah.
It's essentially the PowerPoint slides that I used
Yeah.
with the short little video pieces, the real video pieces embedded in it. And we'll make all those available along with a discussion guide that I'm happy to say was written by Claude and not me.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah.
and we'll make all those available in the next few days.
Thank you.
Grace.
Thank you, Dave. I want to share some of the resources, those who are want to know more. So one is I just put it in the chat. Dave and I have been going to AI Summit, which is a full denomination ecumenical conferences in the topic of AI and church, and this is the third year, and they've been begin to opening to online registration. So even if you are not, it's in on August 24th to 27th. Even if you are not on that the in-person meeting, you can still hear the speakers. What's the inner issues, particularly AI and church and faith. So if you want to involve and want to know more, this is a wonderful resource. And for the I'm sure Dave introduced this the AI policy that we approved this General Assembly. So the PCUSA will have the advisory committee and the future and technology, and they will produce like a study guide on AI for the use of congregations and with councils. But unfortunately, the way we do the PCUSA style is sometimes painfully slow compared to the fast-paced change of the AI. And one last resources possible is I've been talking to the theology formation in offices in General Assembly office agency. They were actually willing to provide a cohort group of people who want to learn together about the AI and an issue and what's the coming new tools. Right now, some Episcopalians and the ERCA is producing the pastoral tools for pastors can use the new emerging problems with AI use in pastoral care or inside of the church. That will be introduced in that AI Summit in August as well. So that participating that cohort might be another way to ongoing in tune with learning together with AI and church issue.
Thank you, Grace.